Hi, welcome back to session number 3. I'm still with Lord Paul, Paul of the Harris, and from Real Success, who's got that wealth of farming experience that he brings to the table. For me, well, today we're talking about my little niche, which is goal setting and planning. Now, Paul, do you set goals?
I do set goals, not as often as I should do, though, to be fair.
Right.
So often I probably fall into that category of New Year's resolution. You heard of that sort of style of goal setting?
Okay.
So get to the end of the year and think, right, what am I going to achieve this year? And I do it maybe once rather than repeating it again. And occasionally halfway through the year I think, I need to have a look at those goals. What I actually do though, I actually record my goals. So I often call them intentions as well. So I'll record them into my phone so that I can listen back to them. So I'll often remind myself, I've listened to what were my intentions at the start of the year, and I'll record them. But I'm sure there's more I could be doing, Dave, with my goal setting, definitely.
Well, you've used some great words there, like intentions, which is, a lot of people when they set a goal, it's an intention, 99% of the time a positive one. Can I ask you, please be straight, do you have a written down, well-structured, personal and business goal?
So it was nice knowing everybody. I'll see you shortly.
And that's the response I normally get, even in chief exec groups, believe it or not, of any type of industry or business. It is not uncommon for sometimes as few as 5 in 20 people working at the level you guys are working at, business owners, productive, contributing people, effective human beings that others look up to actually not have a written down, well-structured and formulated plan, both personally and professionally. Now, last time we talked about cows and rhinos and how traditionally 3% of the population see what they want, go for it. These are people with well-structured, written down, formulated plans, personally and professionally, that review it, so it's not just an intention, it's a list of actions that they propagate. So, we're going to talk about goal setting. For some of you, you'll go, I don't need to set goals, I'm happy with my lot.
Often, David, often in farming, I think we will sit down with our business consultant at the beginning of the year and agree a budget. And is it true to say for some of us out there, it's the budget that's the goal? It was what do we set in terms of a financial set of numbers? Here are the numbers on my P&L. That's my goal. What's wrong with that, David?
There's nothing wrong with that as a goal, as long as you know why you want it.
Ooh, that's a good question. Do any of us actually ask ourselves that question? So why is it important that we hit this budget?
Yeah. What are you going to do with it?
Often it's just survival, David. It's just, how do we survive?
Now, I am so pleased you said that, Paul, because you're right. In the farming industry, in the world of agriculture in particular, and most farming, it is about subsidies being removed, grants being removed. We've got to survive.
Yeah.
And do you remember last time when we talked about the circles? If you're in survival mode, what are you thinking? How's that making you feel? So both your thoughts and your feelings are fearful, which is away from motivation. Therefore, what kind of experiences are you going to put yourself up there for? How are your outcomes and behaviours going to be? And how's that going to drive the next lot of thoughts and feelings? And
often what it means is that we then look at our costs on our P&L and we'll start, I need to cut the labour cost. I need to cut this cost. I need to cut the cost, cut costs. Now that may well be the right approach, but actually it might well be a fear-based approach, which is how am I going to survive? And yeah, let's be clear, there are times that we have to make those tough decisions to cut our costs. But I think where I sense you're leading us here, David, is there's a bit more potentially that we could be thinking about.
There's lots more. Do you remember last time Paul and I spoke about you've got to work with what's true in a situation and not just understand it but accept it. So if it's true that times are hard, budgets are tight, and you're genuinely in survival mode, is it true, therefore, that the whole industry has gone to hell in a handcart?
No.
Or are there people out there who are thriving, surviving, and doing really well? Are there 2 to 3% of people in your exact same situation who right now, They're doing really well. Why? What is it they're doing differently? How are they thinking? How are they feeling and reacting? What experiences are they putting themselves up for? So it might be true that things are tough, but we determine how we respond to it. And we'll allude to that why thing we've just talked about in a sec, Paul. But at the risk of sounding cheesy, the reason I talk about goal setting is because for the first 30 years of my life, I strived for and achieved nothing at all. Average at best. Then, when I learnt from my research interviews with super successful men and women from all over the world that they do not set average goals. Now, you may have heard the expression realistic and achievable goals, or SMART targets. Now, most people are, you could probably tell from the sneer in my voice where this is going. Most people, even in business schools, leadership development programs, most goal setting and planning books talk about realistic and achievable goals or SMART targets.
That's because we're scared of not achieving them. If I make it too big, then I can't achieve it. If I make it realistic, then I'm more likely to achieve it, aren't I?
100% on the money, Paul. Sorry, I shook my head. Yes, 100% on the money, Paul. It's because we fear a lack of control, a lack of security, or a lack of approval from our peers. And because of that, we play safe, seeking more elements of control, feel more secure, and approval from other people. Three of the foundations for emotional and mental well-being. So, SMART. Most of you are aware it stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, not realistic, and time-bound, or timely. Most people assume that it was created by a guy called Peter Drucker because of a book, What He Wrote, inside which he talked about SMART goals. He was one of the first to publish it, but he was not the original creator of the acronym. That was a guy called George T. Duran in America, and he was a project manager. Get this, right? Paul, I've read everything he's written, and to my knowledge, I've watched the only video that exists of him being interviewed, in which he never once, not once, talks about how your goals should be SMART. Not once.
What does he say then?
He says when you're working on a really big project, the steps to your goal should be SMART.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. All of a sudden, oh yeah, kind of a no-brainer. This guy he wasn't an average project manager. He worked on multi-billion-dollar water utility projects and was a university professor on the subject. So, if his intention was that we set big projects with incremental steps to our goal that are realistic and achievable or SMART, what would actually stop you if everything on your to-do list was realistic and achievable? What would actually be a blocker for you from preventing you from not just surviving, but thriving?
This is reminding me of your 5-minute discussion where the little steps are all lots of 5 minutes, and that then means you can expand. Someone that comes to mind is, do you think that someone like Richard Branson set SMART goals, realistic goals? A guy that had a record shop and then ended up with condoms, airplanes. Do you think that's somebody that set small goals?
I know for a fact because somebody you've met, a friend of mine, who was his global group brand manager.
Wow.
When Virgin brand was going prolific. He used to sit at the table with Richard Branson. I know Richard Branson doesn't set realistic and achievable goals. What he does, he sets possibly the most massive goals you can imagine and then gets other people to do realistic and achievable tasks to take the goal to its conclusion. And think throughout history. Could you imagine the conversation if someone dared to turn around to an Egyptian pharaoh and went, you want to build what? Yes. What? We haven't got cranes. We haven't even got a written language. And you want to... Where do you want to get the stone from? 60 miles away? How? What? You want to do what? Imagine someone saying no to a pharaoh, but look what we've got. Could you imagine if someone turned round at a time when most human beings on the planet believe the world to be flat, right? Could you imagine someone Christopher Columbus going, hey guys, down the pub, he says, guys, got this idea, right? I don't think the world's flat. No, I think it's round, okay? Round. I think if we go sailing in that direction, we won't plummet off the edge into an abyss never to be seen again if we get past the mermaids and the sea serpent. I actually assume that we'll go round, yes, round the world and end up where we start. You can imagine his friends going, yeah.
Now you'll fall off.
Yeah.
You go to the edge and you're going to fall off into the abyss.
I think they'd kill him as a heretic.
Yeah.
So...
It's the same with you know, people talk about Kennedy, don't they, and the space program in America, which was about getting a man on the moon. I mean,
which wasn't the goal.
What was the goal?
There is a famous, and I'm yet to find out whether it's true, but there is a famous quote that says Kennedy's goal was not to get people to the moon. His goal was to get people to the moon and safely back again.
Very important distinction.
You've got to be careful what you wish for when setting goals, my friends.
Yeah. But again, so this is this illustrating what you're talking about in terms of the difference between this realistic or relevant or small step goals to the actual bigger goal itself. Is that what you're alluding to?
Absolutely.
And from a farming perspective, we need to do some steps to survive. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But is that the goal? Is that the only goal?
100%.
Surely it could be bigger or more than that, I think is what you're suggesting.
And taking that JF Kennedy quote, if it's true, to the farming perspective, which is your goal to meet budget, or is your goal to meet budget, working less, spending more time on holiday or with the family, and with a happy, productive team?
Interesting.
What is the goal? And as nailed down specific as you can make it. Also, here's the thing. I've interviewed, as of Paul and I sitting here today, 258 top achievers. I've asked them all the same question, which is, how do you set goals? This is just in case anyone needs some more credibility before they listen to what I'm going to say next. 258 top achievers, men and women, every walk of life you could imagine, asking them, how do you set goals? How many of them, Paul, do you think answered said question by going, ooh, I set realistic and achievable goals, or smart targets?
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Not one of them. So, if people who haven't achieved much are telling us to set realistic and achievable goals, but really successful people set massive goals, that is the most common word used in the answer to how you set goals in my research, who's got it right?
Depends what you want, I guess.
That old chestnut.
It depends what you want. There might be some people listening are out there who are happy with the way things are, and that's okay, isn't it?
If they are genuinely happy with their lot, these are the people who perhaps I've got the most respect for in the world.
Mm-hmm. Why is that, David?
Well, in my experience, in the last 23 years of presenting to 1.2 million people and people saying to me, but I'm happy with my lot, and then me asking 2 or 3 questions that make them go, oh.
So perhaps I'm not quite as happy as I thought I was.
We fool ourselves that we're all okay.
Yeah.
All I typically say to people is, so you don't want more. Or if anybody listening to this is old enough like me to remember 1970s washing powder adverts, are you happy with your wash? Do you want whiter whites? Do you want a bit more money in the bank? Do you want a bit more time off? Do you want to be less stressed? Do you want to be able to have a conversation with your kids without you snapping at them or them snapping at you?
I think you've just hit on something really important for the people listening from the farming sector, is that it's what do you really want more of? And certainly a lot of people I speak to in farming, and not always the farmer, but maybe it's the farmer's partner, says, I just wish we could have more of them. How many farmers don't go on holiday with their children because they say they can't leave the farm? I talk to a lot of people who run farms who holiday separately because they can't leave the farm together. So it might, our most precious resource, of course, being time. If your massive goal, actually, beyond survival this year, is to take a 2-week holiday, that could be so huge and so significant that is actually a massive goal. And I think for many people listening and watching, getting time back would be one of those massive goals, which to other people you think, what, a 2-week holiday, that's just normal, isn't it? I know that many people listening here haven't taken holiday, and yet one of my biggest messages to farmers is let's get your life back. That should be one of your goals, is get some time back. And I think just being that as a massive goal would be huge for some people.
I think that is awesome. Yeah, I'm already thinking of two farmers I know personally who would go, oh yeah. Yeah, that would be good.
And your comment about, so you're happy with the way things are. There's also, I think we need to be aware in the agricultural sector, and this may be controversial, but that's partly what this programme is meant to be, to get us thinking. I think there's also an element of, you would call it in an old-fashioned way, a sort of a macho, working hard. Holidays for wimps, didn't you know? Yeah. I haven't got time to take holiday. I'm far too important.
100 hours a week, 365.
As if it's some badge of honour that we don't get time back. So I would set a goal for the industry, almost a massive goal for the industry is let's get people having the time to be away from their farms and take genuine holiday time. Not that holiday time where for the first 4 days you just collapse onto a beach and sleep because you're so exhausted. You have a couple of days where you enjoy yourself, and then the next 4 days you're worrying and back on the phone before get back to the farm. Yeah. Quality time, that would be an awesome goal for this industry to achieve, I think.
And if anyone remembers the cow and rhino statistics, but the percentages, in my experience only, there are only 2 to 3% of people who end up genuinely happy with their lot. And these people really are at peace with themselves and the world and their work or their business and their career and their friends and their families and their relationships. And they tend to be just 2 to 3% of the population. The rhinos.
That's a scary statistic.
It is terrifying. Most of us, we convince ourselves we're happy with our lot to stop us from wanting things and then not doing it in case we fail or people don't like us.
Good point.
So it goes back to the thoughts driving the feelings, driving the experiences, it all comes back to it.
So how do we do it?
Well, there are two things. Number one is we set massive goals, which when Paul's gone, I'll show you a little thing called a triangle, right? It's really good. It'll change your life. It's changed mine massively. I'm going to share with you a proven goal-setting process taught to me by top achievers. There's one last thing, though. Other than knowing what the goal is, being specific and making sure it's massive and exciting, we said about the why. You've got to know why you want it. Because if people do set a big goal, typically we'll start, and then it'll get hard, or we'll stumble, trip, fall, fail, face plant on the patio, or we'll struggle at some point with a massive goal, and we'll say, "Told you I'd fail. At least I tried."
It's too hard,
and then we give in and walk away, Paul. What I want you to consider is this, my friends: if it's truly a massive goal, something you really, really want, you've got to have a reason why you want it that is bigger than your fear or insecurity around it.
Can you give some examples of that? What would somebody's why be in business, not just in farming, but some examples of the people you've spoken to? What have been their whys that have enabled them to overcome those challenges that are naturally going to come up when you're chasing a big goal?
Oh, I can give you both a personal and a business example.
Great.
So in my speaking business, when I first started, I was all about me. I wanted approval, acceptance. I want people to give me standing ovations, make me feel good. And sadly, I was incredibly ego-driven. And all I wanted was for people to like me and tell me how good I am. So you can imagine all I needed was one person to tell me I was rubbish. And that would it, boom, blown out the water. I told you I was rubbish, sulk for a week because one person out of 100 didn't like me. Whoopee-doo. Then I began to realise that all the time I'm thinking about me and my feelings, I am not in service of the people in front of me. And that wasn't a light bulb moment. That was an arc lamp. It was it was like a moment. Absolutely colossal for me. And so ever since then, I have given everything I can in service of the audience. And the difference, Paul, that has made, because now I accept that occasionally people aren't going to like me. Statistically, 1 or 2 in every 100 of you lot, you're not going to like me. You're going to much prefer Paul.
And vice versa.
And vice versa. All we can do is work with what's true. But if I'm sitting here worrying about the 2 or 3 of you that aren't going to like me, I'm not in service to the 97% who, if I serve you, I can help you.
So how did that shift, that focus to now having the why being quite different, how's that manifested in terms of the size of the goal that you set or even the success that you've achieved?
This sounds flippant, but my turnover's pretty much gone up year on year without trying any harder, and the impact. So now my goals aren't financial. My goals are measured impact. So every year I look at who's done what using my content, who has achieved something, setting a massive goal. Last time we talked about Peter, the ploughing champion. You know, he was a big tick in my box for me. I didn't earn any money from Peter achieving his goal. Nothing, not a cent. Boy, did I feel good, because I was in service to him, and look what he achieved. Other than my family, Paul, the thing I'm most proud of in my business, it's not the turnover, it's not the profit, it's not the way we sell and market or promote. It's the things other people have done. And because that is now my motivation, I don't know if you can say, this is a genuine smile. My motivation is impact, not applause now, not money. I happen to get applause and I happen to make money because I'm in service. So now the business is purpose-driven.
So how's that helped you when you've hit an obstacle? You said at the beginning, when you have your why, that will help you to overcome obstacles. So now you've got this real sort of impact-driven purpose. How's that helped you overcome obstacles that you've faced?
Well, that's a good question, because we hadn't prepared this, but ironically, let me take a personal example where that exact thing happened. First time I ever set a big goal, I was terrified to my core. I was a chef, I only had my spare time, I was working by myself, never fundraised for charity before, and my brilliant idea was, Dave, why don't you see if big goals work by trying to raise a lot of money in one event for a local charity? So I went to, Paul, Cancer Research at Birmingham. They were called the Crab Appeal. And these were like 7 men and women, big hitters in the West Midlands in industry, who raised awareness and funds for cancer research at the University Hospital. I walked in, a little fat guy from Birmingham, dressed in chef's whites, with my notes shaking in my hand because I wasn't a professional speaker then. And I said, I've interviewed some successful people. I want to see if this thing works, massive goals, and I want to raise a lot of money in one event. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And after asking a couple of questions, they essentially said, with respect, you can't do this, bye-bye. Thank you for showing an interest in cancer research. Goodbye, what you're doing is ridiculous, unachievable. Now, previously in my life, Paul, if that would have happened to me, I probably would have sulked. I would have walked out, thrown a bit of a pity party.
They know what they're talking about.
Yeah. And if I'd have really let it get to me, I'd have either got angry or perhaps even got upset. But what they didn't know is that 3 or 4 months earlier, I'd lost my mum very suddenly to cancer. Now, I don't want to bring the mood down, but I lost my mum to cancer very suddenly, never got to say goodbye properly. So I promised over her deathbed that I would do something significant in my life to help other people in her name. They didn't know that, but when I walked out the room for the first time, instead of going, oh no, at least I tried, and giving in, I walked out going, really? Over my dead body, am I going to fail?
Yeah, watch me.
Watch this.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, there were several other major hurdles and obstacles and challenges where we perhaps at one stage should have given up and walked away, my friend and I. But because our resolve and our purpose and our why was much bigger than our fears of failure and insecurities, we smashed it. I will demonstrate to you later on in the video, but we didn't raise £50,000, but we did raise £288,000, smashing not only the Crab Appeals fundraising record, but at the time for a volunteer, Cancer Research UK's fundraising record. And we smashed it out the park because we had 2 things. Number 1, massive goal that really excited us. And 2, we had a reason why we must, over our dead bodies, do we need to fail. And Paul's message to you earlier about if you haven't got a massive goal, how about taking 2 weeks off this year on a beach in Spain with a pina colada in your right hand and your sunglasses in your left, No, have your sunglasses on your head. That's where they should be. But if that is truly a massive goal for you, think about your well-being, the time with your family, reconnecting with your loved ones, or you just having some
downtime.
rest and downtime. Is that a big enough why? If not, find one. But that reason why is the biggest motivator of all towards a massive goal, Paul.
Okay. What was the business example that you gave?
The business example was of my own business being purpose-driven.
Got you. Oh, yes, sorry, I'm with you now, yeah.
Yeah, but I could also tell you about a kitchen company in Warsaw who was only about the money, and boy, were they good at making money. He's now a good friend of mine, started off as a client called Sat. Sat Sembi made luxury kitchens, fitted and manufactured luxury kitchens. And he said, all this wise stuff, what's all that about? I says, well, why do you make money then? He says, well, to provide for the family. I went, with respect, sir, you're minted. You know, he's one of the richest men in the West Midlands. He's minted, he makes truckloads of money. I said, you've got enough money. Why are you still so driven? And he thought about it, and I don't know what the culture is in your family or in your community or in your industry. But in his community, he sighed and he went, actually, I just need to be seen to be doing better than my brother. I went, what? And then I told him exactly what I've just said to you. He goes, I have a reason why that's bigger than your fears. What you're doing is fear-based. So, and bearing in mind, financially, doing really well. He came back from a holiday where his family originated from, and he'd spent some time there, and he came back. And he came back with no suitcases, big draggled, and I says, whoa, what's happened? He says, Dave, I just gave everything away that I went out there with. I went, oh, great, respect to you. He says, but Dave, I know my why. I went, what is it, mate? And he said, I need to get the team and the families buy-in, but I saw so many kids in the villages with eye problems that if we make enough money, we could make a massive difference. Now, that's a why, not a what, to make a massive difference in the community. I wonder if that could be for your farm. Could you make a massive difference in your community? Maybe. So he got his family's buy-in, his team's buy-in. He says, if we hit this, that's what we did last year, gangbusters, because we had a good year. But if we achieve a step above, how about, would you be okay if we can hit that target, we make a difference by doing this, and this in the communities? And they all agreed, and they smashed it out the park, mate. Smashed it out the park. So that is the power of having a why.
A powerful why.
It smashes through the fears, the insecurities, and it just makes you so much more resilient to the challenges and obstacles.
So as a background to what you're going to talk about in terms of how we set massive goals, I think the point you're making is that it can be difficult when we're on a farm to be thinking massively. It could be we're thinking survival, but actually it could be a massive emotional goal, which is this maybe some time off with the family. It could be raising some money for a charity. It doesn't have to be specifically business related. It can just be something that really means something to us.
100%.
Okay.
100%.
Right.
And I'm not trying to encourage anyone to diversify and go to an attraction farm, but I spoke at the Farm Attractions Association conference, and one of the guys who got up to speak was, I think, a former chairman of the association, and he owned a farm down south, Devon, Cornwall, Somerset Way, called The Big Sheep.
Oh, The Big Sheep have been there.
If you've ever gone down the M5, you'll have seen the signs, The Big Sheep. And this guy, he was intelligent, he was witty, he was funny. We'll try and get him on as a guest if we can. And the reason I remember it so clearly is because he said we were getting stressed about all these sheep that we had to feed. He says, just by thinking and behaving differently, his words, not mine, he says, by thinking and behaving differently, we decided to set a big goal for the project, and we turned it into a partly attraction to begin with. And the first thing we discovered is that people would pay to park their car on a field we don't use. Cha-ching. Secondly, people would then pay us to feed our sheep for us. Cha-ching. And he says that is what gave him then the confidence. But him and his family had a why. They knew they needed to change. And they wasn't just about survival. They wanted to change so that they were working less. He says, I don't work 7 days a week now. I don't work 40 hours a week now.
or 60, 70, 80
60,
hours
70,
a week.
80, yes, indeed. So, in a minute, I'm going to show you the process. Here's the thing. If you only use this process for your daily or weekly to-do list, anyone do to-do lists, right? If you only use it for your daily or weekly to-do list, I can report back an average increase in productivity of 26.5% for you. Now, that's to take to the bank, even if you don't use it for a massive goal. Just for your daily, weekly, monthly productivity, up 26.5% if you set your goals and your daily tasks in the way I'm about to show you. However, if for that 5 to 10 minutes a day, you focus diligently on the task towards your massive goal, can anyone remember the percentage of productivity you can go up over a year? In excess of 112%. That kind of mentality and thinking, Paul, isn't survival.
No, that's massive.
That's massive. It's thriving. It's glorious. Glorious.
And isn't it interesting as well? We talk about what is success, and you know, for some people, survival is success. For others, growth is success. It's a very personal thing, isn't it? And anyone listening has to get what's right for them out of this. What's their version? But what we're really saying is that we don't have to be mediocre, is what I'm hearing from you, David.
Yes. Paul, you said one of my favourite words, mediocre.
Mediocre. We don't have to be mediocre. We can strive for more. And I think sometimes when there's all this coming at the industry, all these different factors that are making it very difficult, almost there's a risk that mediocrity can creep in through the back door almost, because almost that might be enough for us to survive, whereas I think what you're saying, your message, is actually we can think beyond that. We can think bigger than that.
If anybody listening to this remembers Pertemp's Recruitment, they were big in the high street, mega recruitment chain. I think they've changed their name now, but their founder and CEO, Tim Watts, one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country, I said to him, how do you set goals, Mr. Watts? Now, successful, pragmatic, sensible businessman, right? He said, I set big, fat, hairy goals too. I nearly spat out my tea I had in my mouth. I went, sorry? And he went, big, fat, hairy goals. I said, Mr. Watts, are you aware people are being taught to set realistic and achievable goals? And when he finished bellyache laughing, he looked me square in the eye and without a heartbeat said, you mean we're setting people up for mediocrity at best? And I've remembered that ever since that day. And when I look back, a lot of the top achievers, their perception of realistic goals or whatever goal, or not having goals, Mr. and Mrs. Farmer, is mediocrity at best. Now, don't you deserve better than that? My assumption is you absolutely do. My assumption is that you can have more.
Okay.
That's my assumption. And not just an assumption. It's my experience based upon 1.2 million people having experienced the goal-setting process. So how about we get into that? Have you got any other questions before we get
No,
into
just I think the principle of not accepting mediocrity is one that I think whether for some people the big hairy goal will be more emotional, physical, spiritual. It doesn't have to be a lump of cash. It doesn't have to be. It's very personal.
Yeah.
And I think I would just encourage those out there listening who've listened to this last sort of 20 minutes, half an hour discussion on goal setting, take it on board for them, what's right for them personally, and choose your big, what was it, big fat hairy goal?
Big fat hairy goals.
That will work for you. Brilliant.
And in a world full of colour, don't be beige. Don't be vanilla, all right? Just don't be beige. So, Paul, thank you very much for your time today. I know you've got to run, so I'll let you love me and leave me, metaphorically speaking. And I will now show you the massive goal process.
See you soon.